Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. It's your old pal Jake, and it's a 2 for Tuesday. That means we are doing a second stream. We do it in a later night, perhaps a bit too late, because I don't think about it until I'm actually going. Man, oh man. A lot of exciting developments today. Bo of the Fifth Column discussed a development that we should be looking for today. Well, that development has happened. It's with Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. Side note, I watched a couple of old streams. I keep referring to her when I'm talking with her alongside Dana Nessel. I keep referring to her as the Attorney General. She's not. She's the District Attorney. I don't know why I've said that. Weird. But that brings us to a lovely little challenge that I've worked up. I think you should try. I think it'll be a lot of fun. And most importantly, I think it'll switch some MAGA people from being in a cult to being, sane. Then we have just an incredibly, you love to see it, ironic development with Mike Pence and classified documents. You'll be shocked to find out where that's gone. And then MSNBC spoke with a Florida teacher. Doing it again. I talk about one thing, it always bleeds over into the other. A Florida teacher who is sick of Ron DeSantis' stop woke nonsense. Love to see it. Glad it's getting a national audience to hear, a little bit of reality about what's going on in the country we live in. By the way, if you're joining us from outside the United States, I'm sorry. We're working on it. Let's have a look at Bo of the Fifth Column. So we've been waiting for developments in the Fulton County case into election tampering. Donald Trump appears, from what the public has seen, to have attempted to nullify the votes of Georgia voters by pressuring officials in Georgia to just find him enough votes, to win him that state, that crucial state that would have affected whether or not he became president, in conjunction with 7 other states that he tried to tamper with. Allegedly. Well, now we have some developments there. Fani Willis has been doing a diligent job of investigating this. And Bo of the Fifth Column yesterday gave a great summary of what we were looking for today. Let's listen to that first.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So today we are going to talk about Georgia, because for a whole lot of people, Georgia's going to be on their mind. Either today or tomorrow, depending on when you're watching this, Tuesday, there will be a proceeding. And that proceeding will give us a pretty good indication, should give us a pretty good indication of how things will advance in Georgia and what is going to happen in relation to that long-running investigation into the alleged election interference by Trump and team.
Part of the reason, in particular, that I am so excited about these cases is they are state-level cases. Just a quick recap. If Trump is charged for state-level crimes, there is not a presidential pardon that can save him. And as crazy as that might seem to people to think, why would Joe Biden pardon Donald Trump? Boy, let me tell you. Richard Nixon got pardoned. Richard effing Nixon got a pardon. The excuse is always to have peace in the country, to move on. George W. Bush wasn't even investigated. Barack Obama said that his administration had no interest in these things and that he would put no pressure on anybody to do anything regarding George W. Bush. George W. Bush lied to the American people, got 7,000 American service members killed, and 8,000 contractors killed, an unknown number of Iraqis killed, people in the Middle East, frankly, with a war that lasted for 2 decades. That was started on a lie, a conscious lie. As in, he knew that what he was saying was the exact opposite of true. I do not trust the federal government to handle these matters because they have a long history of letting the bad guys go. So I'm excited to see state-level investigations. Keep it going, Bo.
There's a hearing, and this hearing will determine whether or not the special grand jury report, special purpose grand jury report, becomes public. This report makes recommendations, doesn't issue an indictment. The DA, she's had it for 2 weeks, so she's probably already made up her mind. During this proceeding, the expectation is that she's going to speak. From what she says, we might get a really clear picture of what can happen, even if the report isn't released. If it is released, we'll get a good look. You know, right now, what most people know is that phone call. You know, find me the votes. That phone call.
I have been of the belief, and I maintain this, that phone call by itself is enough for a conviction. Just proving that phone call did indeed happen and the people on either end of the line were indeed who they said they were. Just that. The words that were played on the national news, just that is enough for a conviction. And should have been pursued from the beginning. I'm delighted that DA Willis is going after it like she is.
Majority of people watching this channel have their opinion of what that is.
Case in point.
And it is Trump asking for votes, asking them to interfere with the vote count.
And what I would be looking for the record, in a trial just based around that phone call. It's not, they've gone to greater lengths, apparently, but they interviewed over 75 people. But what I would be looking for is proof that that phone call did indeed happen. People on either end of the line were indeed the people who it appears to be. Or prove that somehow there was more to that call that makes it clear that Trump was not pressuring. I don't know how you would, but was not pressuring Georgia officials to overturn the election. That would be a hell of a twist that was left out of that phone call if that was the case. But let's hear.
At the bare minimum, interfering with an election officer in the course of their duties. That's how most people see it. We don't know what was uncovered during the investigation. There may be exculpatory evidence. There may not be. There may be stuff that's even worse. We don't know. They have been very quiet. But they're done now. Maybe we get a glimpse of it very soon. If not, we might be able to make some inferences based on how the prosecution handles the hearing. It is worth noting that Trump's team will not be there. They have taken the stance that, they weren't asked to participate in this at any point in time, so they don't need to be there today.
They also don't have much to gain by being there. It's whatever you think of them. I think it's a savvy, at least political move. And to be fair, I'm not an attorney. I'm viewing this as politics. The savvy political move not to draw more attention to this particular incident. They are hoping that the standard issue Democrat playbook happens, where a Democrat DA does the investigation, makes a lot of noise, and then doesn't have the guts to go through with it. So as little attention as they can draw is probably wise on their part.
Okay. The big question that people have about this is, well, what comes after this? Either everything or nothing. This is the end of the investigation process by most conceivable scenarios. Odds are that the next real developments will be this case going away or indictments. This is the find out portion of the proceedings. I'm talking about us being able to find out what's going on.
Yeah, but also a little bit F around and.
There are a lot of expectations, but until we see the report, they're very speculative. So we're going to have to wait and see that. It will remain a mystery. Aside from the legal aspects, you have to consider the political aspects.
Fair.
If this occurs, if Trump and team is indicted or there are charges related to this that eventually may end up at Trump's door, it's obviously big news. And it is going to throw a lot of dominant headlines right now into the recycling bin of the news cycle. They'll be gone.
Understatement of the century. Certainly, Joe Biden does not have the ability to press a button and either make this thing happen or not. He's not involved in any way. But man, that guy's got to be hoping that the announcement of indictments is made, and that they are made at a time when he himself is going through some shenanigans, like, say, his own documents scandal, which is, in comparison to Trump, nothing. But nonetheless, you gotta appreciate that Biden is getting a little bit of the Trump effect, where there's so much going against this guy that one thing gets washed away by the wave of news about the next.
It's also worth noting that if Trump is indicted, it'll be the first time that a former president's been indicted. It will undoubtedly cause a disruption within the GOP. What is interesting about this is all occurring at the state level. And many of the mechanisms that might want to protect the institution of the presidency, yeah, those exist in D.C., not in Atlanta.
Thank God.
So there's probably a better shot of something moving forward at a state level case. And we're going to get to see what happens today, at least hopefully get a better picture. Now, it's also worth noting that this DA's office, that they've been pretty quiet. They're not telegraphing a lot of their moves. So if the report remains sealed and we don't get to see it, and they're careful in their arguments, then we may walk away knowing no more than we know right now.
Fair enough, Bo. The question is, why? Why are they so quiet? You have the legitimate reason for this. I'll go a little bit bigger here for a minute. You have the legitimate reason for this, and the reality. Legitimate reason, when it comes to political scandals, legitimate reason is that they don't want to spoil the prosecution. They don't want the public to form an opinion before a jury has even been selected for the actual trial. In fact, that can spoil the actual trial because the defendant can then say, look, all this information about the case was released before we had a chance to defend ourselves in court. It means people went into that trial having made up their minds already. Judge, you got to throw it out. You got to declare a mistrial. The actual reason when it comes to politics, and let me be clear, there's no book somewhere that has this written down. This is my opinion based on watching the nightmare that is the American judicial system for 36 years. The actual reason, in my opinion, is that they want the story to die down so that when they finally say, we're not going to do anything, it's not as fresh in people's minds. Either people have forgotten about it completely, people have stopped looking for updates on it, and they don't notice when that announcement finally happens, or they can't quite remember the details. They can't quite remember how bad X or Y was. And so they don't complain as much. They don't yell at the prosecutor who failed to prosecute as much. That's what normally happens. I think Fani Willis, just based on what I've seen of her, is cut from a different cloth. I think she is actually interested in justice. So Bo was saying, let's look out for Tuesday's announcement. Well, Tuesday's announcement has come. Are they going to release the information? The special grand jury report? The judge is still deciding, they say, but Willis said they should not. Ooh, boy. Here it is. Article on CNN. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. There we are. Fani Willis suggested Tuesday that the special grand jury investigating Donald Trump and his allies' efforts to upend the 2020 election in Georgia, aka election tampering, has recommended multiple indictments and said that her decision on whether or not to bring charges is imminent. So first of all, she confirms the special grand jury recommended multiple indictments, more than one people getting tried for this, in other words. That's what the special grand jury recommended. That we know. If we're looking for a summary of the grand jury, the special grand jury report, there it is. They have recommended that multiple people get charged with crimes for this incident. That is huge. Don't forget that in all of this. Second, she says a decision on whether to bring charges is imminent. Now, that's a new development. That means she is going to decide whether or not to follow the recommendation of the special grand jury soon. I want to be clear. Soon, in terms of DA talk, is that could be tomorrow. That could be at the end of March. In short, it means A, I don't want to be rushed, and B, if and when I go through with this, I don't want my trial spoiled by a bunch of gossiping Jeffs. Gossiping Jeffs. Good Lord. Gossiping Garys. There we go. At a hearing in Atlanta on whether to publicly release the special grand jury report, Willis, a Democrat, said she opposes making it public at the moment, citing her ongoing deliberations on charges. Remember, it's not her decision, it's a judge's decision. Normally, I am not for, just as a general rule, I am not for keeping things secret. In the criminal justice process, there's a good reason for it. I think that reason is abused, but there is a good reason. Decisions are imminent, Willis told Judge Robert McBurney. It's up to Robert McBurney whether or not to make this report public. The people who are going to be pushing for it, as in the moneyed interests that are going to be pushing for it, that's the media. They're going to try like heck to get this report given to the people. They will be doing all the filing and yada, yada, yada to try to make it happen. As they should. As they should. That's their purpose. Don't hate on the media for pushing for that, because that, to keep this country afloat, that is the pressure that's got to be pushing this way so that this way doesn't topple over too much. You can't keep things secret if they're not supposed to be. But should the judge actually go for that? Honest to God, it's a tough call. I don't blame him either way. If I'm put on the spot, I would say probably not. Probably the judge should make the theoretical prosecution as clean of a trial as it can be, so that there is no wiggle room for getting out of this. By wiggle room, I mean something other than just the facts of what happened, resulting in or affecting the results of the trial. CNN article continues, "We want to make sure that everyone is treated fairly." Well, there we go. And we think for future defendants, my word, and we think for future defendants to be treated fairly, it's not appropriate at this time to have the report released, Willis said. The special grand jury, barred from issuing indictments, penned the highly anticipated final report as a culmination of its 7 months of work, which included interviewing witnesses from Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to former Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani. I want to go back to her quote just then. "We think for future defendants to be treated fairly. Not appropriate at this time to have this report released." Interesting. So she is suggesting there that the hypothetical case she may choose to bring would involve multiple defendants. She could just be speaking in general terms. Let me be clear, I'm just reading tea leaves. But to me, that does sound like she is talking about the conspiracy crew. Trump, Giuliani himself, he's got his hands all over everything shady Trump did in 2020. Lindsey Graham. Anybody involved in that super corrupt appearing phone call. Yeah, I again want to be clear though. We are looking at a couple of statements that Fani Willis issued today suggesting that this not be released. Its final report is likely to include some summary of the panel's investigative work, as well as any recommendations for indictments and the alleged conduct that led the panel to its conclusions. So what are we going to see? Number one, bear in mind that this is not a small document. With the amount of interviews they did, especially to end in a recommendation that a former president's, at the very least, henchman get indicted. That's a weighty document that they've got to look over. Thing number two, the judge said he would not make the decision at the bench. In other words, they were going to end the court for the day. He was going to go back to his chambers, think it over. Fair enough. We will likely hear about the release of this or the not release of it within the next couple of days. Virtually, no matter what is decided, expect an appeal. So If the judge says, you know what, I'm gonna go with Fani Willis's recommendation here. We're not gonna release it. Trump team will be happy with that. They won't say anything. Media will not be happy with that. They will file an appeal. It'll go up to the Georgia Supreme Court. If I had to call where that shot's going, they're gonna say nope, can't have it. However, if the judge says, I hear what Willis is saying, I believe this is of interest to the people, and so I'm releasing it. Expect then Trump's team to appeal that and say, no. If there's going to be a trial, we want a fair trial. Then again, Supreme Court. And at that point, I would say probably expect a ruling in favor of not releasing it to the public. That's just the default for the justice system. Either way, the point is I wouldn't expect us to see it. Particularly if you don't have the prosecutor saying it's of interest to the people, they should see it now, yada, yada, yada. The optimistic look at this, which I think is actually probably going to turn out to be the accurate look at it. Fani Willis appears to be building her case for prosecution. She appears to be serious about getting a conviction out of this. And I would anticipate her announcement in that timeline I gave tomorrow to end of March. I would anticipate her announcement about indictments, which she does seem to be pursuing from everything we viewed, sooner rather than later. I know it takes a long time to put together such a case, but she's had a long time. A long time for a lot of America is supposed to mean eternity. No. She's had a while to work on this. Yes, she's been moving fast, but she's been being thorough as she does it. She has shown an ability to put together cases against other folks who are powerful. She has an ability to put together RICO cases very well. So I would anticipate an announcement from her about whether or not she's going to seek indictments soon. And if I'm guessing, I'm thinking she's probably going to be seeking them. At least I hope. Do not forget, we have had all presidents who have committed crimes in office get away with it. This would be a major breakthrough for justice in America if D.A. Willis gets it done for us. Even issuing the indictments in and of itself will be history being made in a way that is long overdue. Got something new for you. Let's check it out. Got something new I want to try here. It is a way to help shake some of these MAGA folks out of the fantasy world that they're living in, out of the cult narrative that they're wrapped so snugly in. It's called Bet on Blue. And the idea here is to force people to put their attention where their mouths are. You've had a bunch of cultists that have had years to prepare standard cultist responses for all the sane debate that could be had. And you know what? We've reached a point where normal debate tactics, normal presentation of facts really do not reach them. If you have a loved one or someone in your community that's been sucked down this dark rabbit hole, you probably need to start pulling them out. Here's a way you can do it. Here's a new approach you can take. and could be pretty fun. I'm going to do a series of these, but they're not going to come out all the time because each one is going to require you to take a little bit of time and try it, and also to let me know how it does. First one we have is called the Unsubscribe Challenge. The idea here being you watch content with somebody who is in the MAGA cult. You each select a video. You can up the ante. You can say select whatever video you want from their favorite MAGA person. This will work best, however, if you're already talking about something and they say, Steven Crowder says this. Matt Walsh said that. It's a good follow-up to the where did you hear that nonsense conversation. You say, okay, let's pull up that video. I'll pull up a video from somebody I watch. And we'll both have our cell phones on us. And let's fact check it. And whoever cannot pass a fact check first in their video. In other words, let's say, Matt Walsh says that millions of kids are being subjected to mastectomies in America. And then you do a simple Google search, usually Snopes, and you find, no, that's not true. That was a lie. The first person not to pass a fact check in their selected video, they have to unsubscribe from that channel for a week. 1 week, that's it. You lay down that bet ahead of time before they can say, I don't know if it's fair to unsubscribe for a week just because this person said a wrong thing. Before they start moving the goalpost. Before the thing even starts, you determine where that goalpost is. Why is it a week? Because it's not that much of a commitment. If they really want to go back to their comfy brainwashing chamber, they can. But they have to spend a week not being subscribed to this person. Doesn't even mean they have to avoid their videos for a week. How crazy is that? It's just a little bit of push in the right direction. And I think you'll find that getting these people away from this poison for even a week will be healthy for them. And it has a second very useful effect. They're going to have to watch some real content, somebody talking about real facts. You guys are sitting down together and you're watching 10 minutes of Steven Crowder ranting hate speech. It's going to take them longer to find in your video anything that is incorrect. By the way, side note, if you do come across something that in one of the videos you watch that does not pass a fact check, great. First of all, let your content producer know about it, the person who made it. Tell them in the comments, hey, turns out this isn't real. It's unlikely if you're on the progressive side, but what the heck? Second, see how they react to it. Do they issue a correction? I bet they do. It'll tell you a lot about the quality of person you're listening to, how they handle being wrong about something. On the other side of that, you're going to have your MAGA community member actually, finally getting some real news, getting some real talk about the state of America. And they are going to have to deal with the fact that in their content, they always seem to lose this challenge. But in the content you produce, or you produce for them, in the content you show them, well, they're having a hard time finding where the facts get wrong. It's almost as though they've been duped. That's what you want to show them. Their content is made by a bunch of liars, and you want to expose them to that fact. This can be nothing but healthy for the 77 million brainwashed Americans that we have got to start pulling out of this cult. The unsubscribe challenge. Get your cell phone out, find your nearest MAGA wackadoo, give it a shot, and let me know how it does in the comments. I'm going to certainly put up something on the landing page for the channel, the community page. Yeah, let me know there. Let me know in any video if you did the unsubscribe challenge and how it went. I'd like to know. The general idea, I hope, catches on. But if only a few of us do this, I think it could have a positive effect. Well, if you've been following the document saga from Trump to Biden to Pence, you may have heard Mike Pence recently say, oh, it was shameful. Shameful what Biden did. Oh, why aren't we paying attention to that instead of this thing that Trump did? Let me be clear. The difference is that Trump was notified by the National Archives that he did not return documents that he was supposed to. In fact, he had documents he was never supposed to have taken out of a skiff to begin with. And then he refused to return them. That is the Trump documents case. We would have never heard about it otherwise. That said, here's a hilarious development. Midas Touch put together a hilarious short.
Did you take any classified documents with you from the White House?
I did not.
5 minutes later.
This is CNN Breaking News.
I want to bring you some brand new breaking news. Exclusive CNN reporting just into us. A source revealing, get this, another discovery of classified documents. Roughly a dozen government documents were uncovered at the home of former Vice President Mike Pence. That home is in Indiana. The search took place last week. The documents were found by one of the former vice president's lawyers.
Unbelievable.
The FBI was immediately notified. This find, of course, flies in the face of repeated Pence denials that he held onto any classified materials when he left the government.
Oh, good Lord. Oh, something I will never forgive Donald Trump for, making me defend Mike Pence. So, the only shame to be issued here is, number one, on the American government's ability to hold on to its mother effing classified documents. Does that mean nothing? And number two, on Mike Pence for being a hypocrite, coming out against Biden recently, only to have it be discovered that he did the exact same thing. But in fairness, he did do the exact same thing that Biden did. He found, or lawyers for Pence, found documents in his possession. His side notified the National Archives, and his side returned them. No crime. It's not a crime. So, what will the effect of this be? Simply that the folks ranting and raving about Biden will die down a little bit because they'll be befuddled. Their own twisted logic won't work. Will there be a special counsel assigned to this? If Merrick Garland, coward that he is following the playbook that he's been using, then yes, there will be. I have a suspicion that he will not do that. I have a suspicion that he will treat this the way it ought to be treated, which is to say, the guy returned the documents. He found them, he notified the government, he returned the documents. That's that. Long after Trump is prosecuted for his stealing and illegally holding on to the classified documents that he took, Stealing because he was notified that he had them and he refused to give them back. Stealing because he lied about giving back all the documents, despite knowing full well that he hadn't. Long after that, we are going to have a serious look at how we handle classified documents in the United States of America. It is a joke right now. I have a feeling, and I have plenty of insults for past presidents, but this is not a knock against any of them. I have a feeling if you go into Obama's library, like his at-home library, George W. Bush's, Clinton's, yada yada, you will find classified documents. Just because we have now found, oh God, and all their vice presidents, we have now found classified documents in Trump, Pence, and Biden's possession when they weren't supposed to be. So this seems to be a regular thing that happens. We can't have it. We have to take steps to tighten up our security. That said, do remember there is a huge difference between Biden and Pence on this side, God help us, and Trump on this side. Trump took the documents, refused to return them. That is the difference. The refusal to return. And that is what ought to be prosecuted. Well, it ain't just Trump that's the problem with the country. It is Trumpism, which is the mask-off right-wing extremism that we have seen become just part of our political process. Now, on one side, you have people who actually are interested in facts, people who believe in, wild lefty things like it's bad to be racist, fighting against people who are LARPing in a right-wing cult. The result has been the Stop Woke Act in Florida, amongst other things, and on MSNBC, on Joy Reid's show, The Readout, there was recently an interview which I think is eye-opening. Let's have a gander.
We want to do history. That's what our standards for Black history are. It's just cut and dried history. You learn all the basics. You learn about the great figures. And, I view it as American history. I don't view it as separate history.
We told you last week about the latest move by Governor Ron DeSantis to control the type of education that Florida students can receive, rejecting an advanced placement course in African American studies, claiming it was, quote, contrary to Florida law, and if you can believe it, significantly lacking educational value. We see and hear you, Ron. The law he refers to seems to be the Stop Woke Act, which basically gives DeSantis the power to downplay the actual racial history of our country to appease those who look more like, well, Ron DeSantis. For many teachers, this assault on the education system is instilling fear of teaching the true history of our country, and even Florida's history of racial violence, as depicted in this dystopian ad from the advocacy group Equality Florida.
I have a dream. My 4 little children will be judged by the content of that.
Let me just be clear. A dystopian ad, yes, but the reality we are living in. Because this is the stuff that DeSantis is trying to do.
Character. I have a dream.
Miss George, why is this part crossed out?
But there are some in the state who refuse to back down, like Marvin Dunn, one of the preeminent historians in Florida, who is saying, bring it on. Dunn, a professor emeritus at Florida International University, is taking it upon himself to, as he says, teach the truth by leading statewide tours of high school students and their parents to the sites of some of the worst racial violence in Florida's history, sites that some of these students say they have never heard about in their own classrooms. Dunn is also one of the 8 plaintiffs in a lawsuit over the Stop Woke Act law. He told the Washington Post, quote, listen, if there is such a thing as the woke mob in Florida, I aspire to lead it. Professor Marvin Dunn joins me now Now, he is the author.
Get that man on screen. Just want to be real clear. Civil disobedience is going to become a phrase you hear more and more until Trumpism is stopped in America. Civil disobedience is going to become necessary because some of the behavior that has been put into law and that will be put into law from these MAGA extremists is straight up immoral. It is immoral to follow a law that is immoral, plain and simple. Men like this are heroes, and we got to join them. You're a teacher, the hell of a thing to ask, but you can't follow a law like this. You cannot agree to brainwash children. And if the result is a bunch of teachers are fired, are put in jail, that's what we have to endure in the fight for decency. And all I can say as someone who considers himself an ally of anyone fighting on the side of good is that where I can, I will join you. We have the unfortunate reality to deal with that the America really is going back to those days that Donald Trump said was great. Going back to the 50s. Going back to the 60s. Not going back to the tax policies of those times that allowed us to build up the middle class by taxing the ultra wealthy. Just going back to the racism.
Of A History of Florida Through Black Eyes. And I have not seen this wonderful gentleman in many years. It is good to lay eyes upon you, Professor Dunn. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Joy. Good to see you again, too.
Great to see you, too. So your book is called A History of Florida Through Black Eyes. It contains photos that were unearthed over 50 years of research, documenting lynchings and other crimes against black folks in Florida. You also donated a collection of 4,000 photos to FIU, Florida International University, which I know very well. Is your book, in your view, in your mind, as you understand this, quote, Stop Woke Act, is it legal to teach your book in Florida schools?
Oh, no. If a teacher in Florida schools was caught taking this book to school, he or she could be fired, could be charged with a felony. This book is not allowed in Florida schools because it touches on the very things that DeSantis wants hidden from Florida students. So no, this book is not admitted, could not be admitted into the Florida classroom. That's part of what we're facing here in this crisis.
Why does DeSantis want that history hidden? By the way, there's a question to ask. Because he's trying to repeat it. As he pushes for what he calls anti-woke policies, what he is pushing for is bigotry. That's what he's pushing for. To be woke, according to Ron DeSantis' own definition in court, is to acknowledge that there was or is inequity in the systems we have in place, that the results are not fair for all groups involved. That is being woke, according to Ron DeSantis' definition in a courtroom. To acknowledge inequity, to acknowledge injustice, in his mind is being woke, and he wants to stop it.
And you tweet... Go on.
I was just going to say, I was teaching at Florida International University before Ron DeSantis was born.
Boom.
Now he sidles up to me and tells me what I can't teach in my classroom. Excuse me, sir, you're not my boss. You're not the boss of me. This man, when he taught school for a very brief period of time, some of his students claimed that Ron DeSantis taught the Civil War as if the Confederates had a point. They lost property. Some of his students said that Ron DeSantis taught them that abortion was wrong. Now, he's teaching this in his classes. his political agenda, his personal agenda. Now he comes as governor and tells us we can't teach unless we respect what he prescribes as very, very rigid rules of academic freedom.
How many people do you know that hear about the Civil War or that talk about the Civil War, talk about states' rights? That's a talking point. That's a far-right talking point that a lot of teachers push because they themselves come from a poison culture. What Ron DeSantis is trying to stop, though, is not the spread of opinion, it's the spread of fact. The reasons for X, Y, or Z. That's what he wants cut out. The left-wing meme is the simple question, states' rights to what? To have slaves.
He's a hypocrite. He's an absolute hypocrite. And what he's doing, frankly, is just totally destroying education in Florida. I dare this man to show me one school in Florida where critical race theory is being taught. Just one school. One school in Florida where students are being told, feel bad because of something someone did 20 years ago. Where is that happening, Ron? He cannot point out what this is all made up. It's fake.
Okay, so why is he saying that? Because critical race theory, just for those that haven't been following this close, probably because they understand that it's right-wing nonsense, critical race theory is a college-level class. That's where the name even comes from, a college-level course dealing with the causes of inequity in America. Right-wingers got up on their soapbox and started saying, we got to stop teaching this to our kids. We got to stop teaching critical race theory to our little tiny babies, knowing damn well that kids were not being taught critical race theory. College students were, in a totally appropriate setting. But incidentally, they happen to have taken that buzzword and used it to assault education through and through, from kindergarten till now. Absolutely disgusting behavior.
Aimed at getting him to the White House. This man is running for president and using race as a cudgel to beat the votership over the head.
To your very point, I mean, the things that they claim are their concerns, because you've already had Florida's College Board rejected, the African American Studies course rejected. You've had Florida schools that are under the, sort of the regime of the governor come back and say, no, we promise we're not teaching critical race theory in our schools. As you said, they don't, that they've already backed down and said that they won't do it. You actually went right at Ron DeSantis. You are one of the members, one of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit that is trying to challenge the Stop Woke Act. You tweeted references to your own family's history at Ron DeSantis, and you said to him, this is the history of my own family. These are the things that we have dealt with. Collecting used books from all white schools because they couldn't be allowed to have new books. Being on the migrant trails in the 1940s. Your father not being allowed to be a cook in the Navy during World War II because he was black. Have you received a response from Ron DeSantis on the challenges you put forward about your own history?
Not a word. I wrote to Ron and to Manny Diaz, asking them, what kinds of things am I not allowed to teach? How am I supposed to teach the Holocaust without feelings? How am I supposed to teach slavery without feelings? How am I to explain to students a woman having her baby snatched from her and sold out to someone else and not express my sense that that's evil? So what we're being asked to do is to super sterilize American history, to take race out of it and act as if race wasn't a factor. If DeSantis had his way in the teaching of slavery, for example, slavery in Florida would be taught. Some Africans came over, worked for free for a while, and that was it. That's slavery.
Exactly correct.
Some people took some people and killed them.
Is what he
That's it. Take the race out of it. He is so determined to kill our history that it just makes me and others even more determined to save it and to protect it.
Why is he determined to kill that history? because he's trying to repeat the bad parts. That's the answer.
I don't shrink from DeSantis. He's a bully. He's an autocrat, and he's a little guy trying to become a big guy. He's a baby Trump. And I think the people of this country will recognize that, particularly when they see what he's going to do to our schools if he becomes president.
Well, and I will note that Manny Diaz, for those who don't know, Manny Diaz Jr. is the Secretary of Education. He's the Commissioner of Education in Florida. He is the one who praised the colleges, including 2 that have black presidents, who put out this sort of, statement of kneeling to Ron DeSantis, saying, no, don't worry. We won't teach anything about critical race theory in our schools. I want to point out some of the things that Manny Diaz put out a statement objecting to. Teaching and reading bell hooks. Teaching and reading Kimberly Crenshaw, who is because of her connection to intersectionality. Teaching Angela Davis, a seminal figure in African-American and American history. I could go on. Do you believe that because of what Ron DeSantis is doing, and it's seemingly his personal objection to the idea that there was racism in America and that it should be taught, do you think that's going to make Florida students less attractive to colleges around the country and less?
Before we go into, the financial consequences, just take a moment. Ask yourself a question I find myself asking constantly. Aren't these people embarrassed? How are right-wingers not ashamed to show their faces in public when this is the kind of stuff they're pushing? How are there such a thing as Trump flags in 2023? How does anybody vote for DeSantis and look at themselves in the mirror when this is the kind of nonsense they're pushing? They're against education. Plain and simple.
Education.
Oh my God. They're against education, plain and simple. They have stances on issues which would have been viewed 20 years ago, 20 years of progress ago, theoretically, as being too goofy, too evil to be considered realistic. If you wrote a character that had these stances, you would be made fun of for having a cartoonish villain. That's their actual stances these days. We cannot permit this in our country any longer. They would prefer we become an apartheid state. Actual Trumpers have said on The Good Liars, for example, that they are for a return to slavery. We currently have a form of slavery in the form of the private prison system in the U.S. If you can catch one of them, the them being a wink, you can get them in prison. You can make them work for free. We have a long way to go towards racial equity in our country. We have a long way to go just to undo the evil that has been allowed to happen under our watch. Our being this generation of people who are alive today. Whether you constantly voted against it or not, it happened while we were here. It means we bear some responsibility for it. We have got to undo it. There's a couple of ways you can do that. And you know what? There's another minute and 39 in that video. The link is in the description if you want to watch all of it. This guy does a fantastic job of explaining what is wrong with DeSantis and how you should react to it. I would recommend, though, you take advantage of some of the links provided in this video. You can vote in primaries. you want to know who to vote for, the DSA does a great job of telling you who the progressives are. Progressives will be aggressive about getting us back on track. That would be how I recommend you go about getting change done. 2023 is here. That means 2024 is going to be ramped up to all year, where people are running for office. There's a link to the DSA. You can join them if you so choose. There's also a link under March Like a King to a way you can get notified about marches that might be coming up, how you can organize protests. Take advantage of it. If you are one of the people whose history is being erased, definitely be there. If you are somebody who considers yourself an ally, definitely be there. Don't let these people take all the risk by themselves. Don't let them suffer alone. Stand with them. Well, it has been a lovely 2 for Tuesday. I have enjoyed talking with you. If you enjoyed the stream, I'd really appreciate a like, and hey, maybe even if you're feeling squirrely, a subscribe. I do content like this just about every day. It is my pleasure. We got another show tomorrow. I hope I'll see you there. In the meantime, I've been your old pal Jake. This is WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do.